Welcome to the Point of Difference Rugby League podcast. I'm your host, Dave, and today we're going back in the day with one of the great personalities of rugby league who played for the Panthers, who won a premiership with the Bulldogs, who played for Queensland, the mighty Queensland Maroons. It's the one and only Darryl Brohman. How are you, man?
Dave, I'm well, mate. Great to speak to you.
Mate, it was so fantastic to have you on the podcast. It was fantastic meeting you on the Gold Coast, me and the missus. We met you over there. We might have been a little tipsy by the time we met you, but it's great to meet you sober this time.
That's good, mate. I don't think I drank that day because I had to drive home from the airport, so I had a quiet day. But it was a good day. I thoroughly enjoyed being there, and it was a really nice day. I enjoyed it. Thank you, mate.
Oh, mate, it was a privilege to be there. I was actually quite lucky. Adrian Vowles hooked us up with a couple of tickets, and it was just so cool to get along there and meet you guys. And I think my wife Tracy, she's got a bit of a crush on you after that. I think so. Well done, Big Marn.
Only human champion.
So, what are you doing with yourself, man? What are you up to these days?
Well, mate, I don't do much, to be honest with you. I'm still on the continuous call team on 2GB down here, which does go through Queensland, throughout New South Wales and Queensland. Probably goes elsewhere. I don't know where it goes, to be really honest with you. But I work, do the radio on Saturday and Sunday. Other than that, I still do few bits and pieces with Lowe's. I'm still doing stuff with them. I've been with them for, I don't know how long. I reckon 25 years probably, and done stuff on and off. But unfortunately, they're introducing younger versions of the Big Marn. Matt Cooper's sort of a mini Big Marn now, even though he's not fat, he's just muscly. But they've got a few others. So, mate, I'm 68 now. I realise I've had a pretty good run. And, whatever happens in the future. And we'll just have to wait and see what does happen.
Oh, fair, mate. You don't look 68 at all. You're in fighting good shape. Loving it. But let's go the other way now. We'll rewind the clock. So where did you grow up, and what was life like for a young Darryl Brohman?
Mate, I grew up in Brisbane. I lived in Chermside, which is a northern suburb of Brisbane. We had right behind our house, we had a hospital. It was called the Brisbane Chest Hospital. I don't know why it was called that. I don't think it was only looking after chests. I think it was looking after everything. But we backed onto that, and it had a cricket oval up there, and it had a park where it had swings and all that stuff. And I used to go up there regularly by myself quite often with a football and just practice kicking goals and all that sort of stuff. I've always been infatuated with rugby league. I probably because my father and mum were heavily not really involved, even though Dad coached me throughout all my junior league. I got an older brother, Barry, who played first grade for Brisbane Valleys, and my sister played for Queensland in netball. So we were always quite a sporting family. And I just fell in love with rugby league, started playing. I wanted to play when I was 8 or 9. Mum and Dad wouldn't let me. They waited till I was 11. And played under 11s for Norths in Brisbane, and played all the way through until I actually got picked for first grade when I was 17. I was playing just about to start under 18s in Brisbane, but actually ended up playing first grade when I was 17 in 1974, I think. I can't remember what year it was, around then.
Okay. So what was it about the game that was that attraction for you? Like, was it the physicality? Was it running around? Was it scoring tries, kicking goals, or a bit of everything?
Mate, in the early days, it had nothing to do with that. Our Dad used to take me to Lang Park, and we'd sit there and I'd go and buy hot chips and eat them on the hill. I used to love it. We'd go there. We'd watch 3 grades. We would go there and watch. We'd be there at 12 o'clock, and we'd sit down at Lang Park mainly and just watch. I think mainly Norths, because we lived in the northern area. Because in those days, you played for the club where you lived. You couldn't, like if I lived in Chermside, that was the Norths area. I couldn't play for Souths or Valleys or Brothers or any of that stuff. Okay. So, but we used to go and watch the 3 grades, and I sort of knew nearly all the players, particularly Norths players, all from 3rd grade through to 1st grade. So, and then I started playing, and I was okay at it. In fact, I was better than that. I was pretty good at it. So that makes a difference. I mean, I think you probably like stuff more when you're okay at it, as opposed to not being very good at it. So Just sort of happened from there, and I actually got a text from one of my mates I started with in under-11s at Norths today. He asked me if I was going to Brisbane for the State of Origin, which I am. So I'm going to try and catch up with him. Well, we're doing this on the Tuesday, so I'll be trying to catch up with him tomorrow.
That'd be good, eh? State of Origin decider. How good is that? Do you like a decider, or do you prefer it when it's over and done with after two?
If I'm being honest with you, I'd rather Queensland would have won the second game. Takes a bit of pressure off everybody. Plus, gives me a chance to be a bit chirpy with all the New South Welshmen that are around me down here. So, because I live in Cronulla, and I've been based in New South Wales almost forever. And I have fought the good fight for Queensland. Fortunately, they've won more than they've lost. So it's been a pretty productive time for me, to be honest with you, when it comes to State of Origin. So, who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? I hope Queensland win. I think they'll win, but New South Wales were quite dominant in game two. So you got to respect that. They'll be hard to beat.
Yeah, it's going to be a tricky one to tip for sure. So you're saying like you were pretty okay at it, and because you only started, like you said, playing at 11 years old, and you're already in first grade by 17. So did you have to work quite hard for it, or did you just like skip through the grades quite comfortably?
So to be honest, I didn't have to work all that hard. I'm not trying to sound like a big head, but I was lucky because I was quite skillful. I was quite big. When I was playing in the under 11s, 12s, 13s, whatever, I played a bit of 5'8". I played centre. I played lock. And then as I got older and heavier, I probably lost a bit of my pace. I sort of moved into the forwards more regularly, and was probably a second rower when I first started. Ended up in the front row, as you do as you get older and a bit slower. So, and when you're my size, that's where you sort of end up, particularly if you're not all that fast. And I did lose, a bit of pace. So, mate, I was just, as I said, I sort of just started playing. I was always good with a hand-eye coordination with a ball, for example. I was a pretty handy cricketer, but I used to hit a tennis ball up against, we had a garage, and I hit up against a brick garage, all that sort of stuff. Throw it and kick footballs, try and catch it, all that stuff. I was always pretty good, with catching and that sort of stuff. So that sort of just helped me throughout my career.
Yeah, okay. So what about being a 17-year-old playing against like fully fledged experienced like men, in first grade? How did you cope with that step up?
Mate, it wasn't. First game wasn't good. But I idolised those blokes. I was playing. I was 17 and I was idolising North's Brisbane, who had like Tommy Bishop was playing for Norths. Tommy came up that year. They bloke by the name of Steve Calder, who's unfortunately no longer with us. Tony Trent. A lot of the blokes who are Ralph Michaels, who's passed away. We had a lot of really, really handy players playing for Norths.
Right.
And out of the blue, they had a few injuries in that year. It was 1974, and I think it was more a desperation move because they just needed some forwards. And out of the blue, bloke by the name of Bob Bax, who's a legend in Queensland. In my time, Bob, North's won 7 or 8 premierships in a row in the 60s, and it was easy. They're an easy club to support, given the fact I was living there and had to play for them. I was always supporting them, and Bob Bax coached them. And mate, he was a bit of a Jack Gibson / Wayne Bennett back in the 60s and 70s. And Bob rang me up on one Sunday night. I was sitting at home watching the replay of the footy because I didn't have it live in those days, and rang up and spoke to my father and spoke to me and asked me if I wanted to play first grade the next week. And of course I said yes, but when we hung up, I sort of sat back and thought, it's a big step. These are big boys and it's fair dinkum, and we were playing Wests at Lang Park, and John Sattler was playing for Wests.
Oh, wow.
So I played second row, and we had a bloke by the name of Ron Clothier who played for us, and he was a big, solid, dirty bastard, so to speak. And him and Sattler went hammer and tong. They knew each other. He was originally a New South Welshman, so him and Sattler went hammer and tong the whole game. Sattler left me alone. I didn't play well, and then we lost the game. Right. I was given goal kicking. I was to put it bluntly, I was shitting myself. I thought, geez, what have I got myself into here?
Sure.
And then, I didn't think I'd be picked the next week, and then I was picked next week. I think we played Brothers at Norths at Bishop Park, and we beat them. And I played okay, so I got a bit of confidence out of that. I mean, I was Devo for about a week or so after we got hammered in the first game, and as luck would have it, we went on and won a lot of games. We were minor premiers that year, Norths.
Oh, wow.
So I had a really nice start to my career. We got knocked out in straight sets in the semis, unfortunately, but mate, I got to play with some great players and just loved it. They accepted me, which was great.
That's fantastic. Did you ever fall victim to any of that thuggery, like the good old fashioned scrums and spear tackles and all of that back then?
Of course I did. I mean, everyone did, mate. We've got scars to prove it, and it was a different era. It was tough. And then you expected to cop a whack. As much as I didn't want to, but I wasn't renowned for my toughness. But at the end of the day, you had to be reasonably tough to play in first grade. And you were tough enough. You weren't the toughest, but you learned to cop it and occasionally give it out if you're in a position to do it. Not that I wasn't much of that. I wasn't there to. I didn't ever punch someone or knee them or kick them or anything like that. But if you could get a little bit into them in a tackle, everyone would do it. It was a different era, different age. 74 I started playing. That's bloody hell. That's 50 years ago now.
I had Mark Graham on, and he was the same. It's just how it was. Like every tackle, like 5 out of 6 tackles were spear tackles. It was just the normal.
Mark Graham, I would have loved to have played with Mark Graham. Mark Graham joined Norths the year I left to come to Sydney. I finished at Norths in 78, and I'm sure he joined Norths in 79, and they won a comp, I think, in 80.
They won the comp,
with a couple of blokes who I'd played Shane Bernard, and a bloke I played all my junior football with. He was a hooker. He was a dirty bugger, but he's a good bloke to play with, not against. And I think he would have been part of that North side. It would have been a lot of blokes I played with, from 74 through to 78 in that North side that won the comp in 79 or 80, whenever they won. I think it was 1980 they won it.
Yeah, because Graham Lowe coached them that year, didn't they?
Graham Lowe coached them. Well, we had Bob Bax coached us when I was there. Tommy Bishop was captain coach for a while. Bob Hagan coached us. Bob Hagan was a great coach. Bob Hagan, I think, coached. He was a CEO of the Bulldogs, and he played for the Bulldogs, but he was a very good coach, but so was Baxi, so was Tommy. I was lucky I had 3 really good coaches in that era.
Fantastic, man. So I also hear you had quite the good, ball skills, good kicking game. And like as you said, you were a bit of a goal kicker as well. What was your goal kicking style? Like, because those toe pokers back in the day, it was 50-50 a lot of the time whether they went over.
Oh, Dave, in those days, if you were kicking at about 60%, you were a pretty good goal kicker. I was a toe poker. I was always a goal kicker as a kid. And as I said before, I got thrown into first grade. Not only was I in first grade at 17, they gave me the goal kicking job, and for some reason, the balls felt heavier. I was reasonably accurate, but I couldn't kick them all that far. Like if I had a kick from the sideline, sometimes it would fall short. I wouldn't get the distance. And I don't know why that was. Maybe I wasn't physically strong enough. I don't know.
Okay.
But I actually I played a game for Queensland against the touring English side. I dislocated my shoulder in that game. I missed the game. And I actually was goal kicker in that game. I think if you look back at the history books, I think I did kick a goal for Queensland back in about 1977 or 8, something like that. Yeah. It was a really windy night. And as I said, unfortunately, I dislocated my shoulder in that game and had to go off, but I probably kicked 1 from 5, something like that. I had a few kicks and it was a really windy night. I just didn't go good.
That must have been tough. Pressure, man. Pressure for a young fella. But what about your try scoring? I hear you scored quite a lot of tries, like 95 tries in your career or something like that.
That's on Wikipedia. That's crap.
Yeah, that's what I saw.
I don't know who put that in there. I read that about a month ago. Someone said to me, I said, geez, you're a good try scorer. I said, I scored a few. He said, yeah. Said you scored 95. I said, mate, please. I would have scored I don't know how many I scored in Brisbane, but in Sydney, in my career in Sydney, I might have scored a dozen.
Yeah, it was about that for Sydney, but I assumed because I saw that it must have been in your North days or something
I
like that.
wouldn't have. No way, mate. I wouldn't have. I only played for Norths. Well, as it would have 74 to 78, and I missed
Okay.
most of 78 again with it. I had massive problems dislocating my shoulder. I had
Okay.
3 shoulder operations in my career,
Oh,
and it was just, mate. It really, it stifled my career in a lot of ways. The shoulder was my major problem. I had a broken jaw, of course, that happened in '83, but my
yeah.
major problem, I broke my arm, I think 3 times. So
Oh
I
man.
just kept, every time I was sort of getting into a bit of a groove and running into a bit of fitness, I just had setback after setback. And it really did stifle my career.
Yeah.
I should have been a way better player than I was, um, for a couple of reasons. One was all the injuries, and the other
Yeah.
one is lack of fitness, and that was my fault. I should have been fitter when I played, but I probably relied too much on my skill as opposed to
Right.
fitness. And you need both, obviously. If I would have been fully fit, and all that sort of stuff, I would have been a much better player.
Okay. Well, you signed for the Penrith Panthers in 1979. So what was the journey to going from North and making it to the Sydney competition? And like, how massive was that opportunity for you at the time to be getting that
Um,
opportunity to play first
but
grade in
it
Sydney?
was a great opportunity. I played with Nick Geiger, who you may or may
Okay.
not have heard of, for Norths. He played for Australia in 1978. He was a hooker.
Right.
And I'd once again, I'd missed nearly all of 78 through a shoulder problem and had an operation. Anyway, he was going to Sydney, and I saw a player playing for Balmain who had played all my football against it. He played for East in Brisbane, and I forget his name now. He's a front row. But in 1978, I think he went to Sydney to play for Balmain, and I watched him from Brisbane, and I played most of my junior football against him, and I'm embarrassed to say I can't remember his name. Anyway, he was a front rower as well, and
Right.
he played a lot of first grade with Balmain. And I used to think, geez, I rated myself a better player than him, and he
Mhm.
made a name for himself at Balmain. And I thought, you know what, it's probably now or never for me. So I actually said to Nick Geiger, who was signed with Penrith
Yeah.
in '79, I said, mate, could you give me just a leg up with them, or tell them I'm interested if they're interested. And anyway,
Okay.
as luck would have it, I think Charlie Gibson might have been the boss then, and they came and sat down, chatted to me. I actually was going to go to North Sydney. Believe it or not, I actually did sign a contract with North Sydney
Really?
one night because Tommy Bishop was coaching Norths in '79. And
Okay.
Tommy walked me down. Tommy knew me pretty well. Tommy always had an opinion of me, which I'm, delighted to. It's a nice feeling if a good player thinks you're a good player. So I was going to go to
Absolutely.
North Sydney, but it fell through. Fell through because I asked them. I was always hesitant to go to Sydney because I didn't know much about it, and I didn't really want to live in the hustle and bustle of the city itself. And then
Yeah.
when I spoke to him, I said, "Well, North Sydney, where's that?" I was near the city. I said, "Oh, I'm not sure about it." I think I'd been out with Tommy that day. We got on the drink, and I think I signed when I was a bit under the weather, And anyway,
Perfect.
well, I sort of the next day I regretted it. I thought, well, as you go, knock off a beer yourself.
Cheers to
The next day I
that.
regretted it, and I didn't really want to go there without, I wanted them to fly me down, show me the place, and see where I'm going to live, all that sort of stuff, and they refused to do it. So I got my back up a little bit,
Yeah.
and I got an offer from Penrith, and I knew
Nice.
Penrith was out a bit, and they weren't going. Penrith were down the bottom of
No.
but the money was probably maybe the same. And in
Okay.
the end, I just said to Tommy, Tommy, I don't want to go to Norths, and he eventually, said, okay, we'll let you off. So that's
Nice.
what happened. So I ended up going to Penrith.
An interesting story. I didn't know that. So, what sort of contract did they offer you back then? And were you still working full time? Like, what did you do for
Yeah,
a job as well as
I
playing?
know. I was working in the bank. I worked in the
Really?
bank for when I left school, mate. I think the contract was 11,500 a year for 3 years.
Okay, that's not too bad.
Oh well, in those days it was all right. It
Yeah.
was I was getting in Brisbane. I don't know what I was getting in Brisbane. Might have been getting 4,000. I don't know a year. But it was 11.5 or 11,000 a year for 3 years at Penrith. I went down. I fitted in quite well at Penrith. And I'm still mates with all the boys who I played with in those early days. 79 was my first year. We ran towards the tail of the comp, but we had a good side, mate. Good side as in socially a good side. We played okay. We beat, some good sides. We beat Parramatta quite regularly around that time. For some reason, we played well against them because Penrith and Parramatta were, sister clubs. They're next to each other. And there's a big brother, little brother sort of a thing going on there. And for some reason, we had a good record against them. But when we played sides we should have beaten, we couldn't beat them. It was in our head. Len Stacker coached us. Now, Len played for Norths in Brisbane when I was idolising when I was a kid growing up.
Okay.
And he played on the wing. He was a goal-kicking winger. And he went back to Sydney. Actually, I think he coached Parramatta reserves, I think, in the late 70s, and then came to Penrith in 79. And that's another reason I went there, because I had a link with Len, because he played for Norths. I didn't know him.
Yeah.
But I love Lenny. He's a great fella, and he was a great coach. Anyway, so I ended up going to Penrith with Nick Geiger, and as luck would have it, Nick just didn't adapt to Penrith, and I think he left before the year was out and went back to Queensland. So but I enjoyed it.
Oh, that's good, man. So how did you feel rocking up to training? You're still your early 20s. You're rocking up to a first grade side for the first time. You get nervous. You're excited. How did you fit into the team? Was there any, apprehension, or is it just get in there, roll the sleeves up?
Of course there is, mate. When you change clubs, there's always apprehension. I was changing states, and not that there was a big rap on me coming down. I mean, they probably wouldn't have known who I was, most of the boys. So I just tried to be myself and fit it in okay with them. I'd go and have a beer with them, and then bit by bit you sort of gain their trust, and then when you start playing, I think I played pretty well. I played all right the first year. Actually won Player of the Year in 79 with Penrith. By that stage, by the end of 79, I was pretty much, they accepted me, and I think they always accepted me. But I must admit, I was overweight. I had an injury in 78. I put a bit of beef on. Had to train pretty hard. I tried to do my best, but sometimes I was huffing and puffing after about 5 minutes of a game. Trying somewhere to hide defensively, and that didn't help. But
no,
mate, the thing I found out, and I stand by it, is the Sydney comp. Everyone looked on the Sydney comp as the piece de resistance of football comps, and it was probably. But I worked out pretty quickly there were no better players than the boys I was playing against in Brisbane. There was just more good players playing in Sydney. Instead of in Brisbane, there might be 8 players of first grade standard that would make it in Sydney, but in Sydney there's 20 in a club or a team.
Right.
Just more of them. Better. They were no better individually. Obviously the stars were, but in general, the run-of-the-mill first grader in Brisbane, if you were dedicated enough, you would probably make it in Sydney in those days. And it's all different now because there's a Brisbane comp, and there's North Queensland, Gold Coast. There's everything.
It's everywhere. Yeah. So you said you didn't necessarily train the best, but what did they put you through, the coaches back in those days? Because people now, they just get flogged, but what was it like back in your day?
They'd try and flog us, but I had my own personal. So one of the trainers took me under his wing and tried to get me right. I mean, that would have been on the instructions, probably the coach. Try and get me as fit as they could. And I was my problem was I was only starting to get fit by the end of the year. And then add into that when I had all these injuries in the meantime, it just put me on the back foot all the time. And as I said, I should have been a better player, and I don't blame anyone other than myself. I just I just relied on my talent as opposed to the whole. You need talent and you need to be fit. And I wasn't fit.
Yes. Okay. So do you actually remember your debut for Penrith, your first grade debut? Was it a shock to the system compared to playing for Norths in the Brisbane Cup?
I think I remember it, but we played Cronulla at Penrith. And Cronulla
Okay.
had the Sorensen brothers, Steve Rogers.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure
Anyway.
it was that game. Anyway, we actually beat them at Penrith.
Okay.
A bit of a surprise because they had a pretty good side, and we had didn't have a great side, but we had a lot of blokes who just had a go. And well, mate, I remember I played against Paul Kahn, who I'd played with in Brisbane. He played for Brisbane North. I don't know if you remember a bloke named Paul Kahn, big front
It doesn't
row.
ring any bells.
Well, he took me under his wing when I was playing for Norths. I was still at school, and he'd tell me, let's get on the drink, have a day off tomorrow at school, and took me fishing and stuff like that. So he wasn't really good for me scholastically, Paul. But he went to Sydney and was playing for Cronulla. Anyway, at the end of the game, we got on the drink and had a good night. And I don't know how I got home, when I got home or whatever, and I picked the paper up on the Monday, and they said 8 of the Cronulla players have been barred for life from Penrith Leagues Club.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, shit, I can't even remember. I was with them. And I hope my career could be all over before it even started here.
Oh,
but
no.
I haven't done anything wrong because nothing was ever said,
Well, just keep turning up.
Steve Edmonds was one. I think Sludge might have got life from Penrith Leagues.
Wow.
There was quite a few of them. They did play up at the Leagues Club, apparently.
Okay.
But I was hanging around with Carney most of the night and a few of the Penrith boys. So anyway, that's 1979. It's a bit late to do it now, do anything about it now. I don't know what I did, but I'm sure it wasn't good.
Anyway. Oh, the good old days. No phones back then.
No phones, thank goodness, mate. My first grade game was against Cronulla at Penrith, and I'm sure we beat them. I know we beat them, but I don't know whether it was the first game of the season or not. But we go from there. You might beat a good side, as I was saying before. We could beat Parramatta sometimes, reasonably regularly, but then we just go and lose to the Newtown or some of the sides that were down the bottom of the ladder.
Yes, that's a very regular thing. I think people, especially like say being in New Zealand here with the Warriors, especially in like the 90s when they had like a stacked side full of Kiwis, and they'd go and beat like Melbourne, they'd beat a top side, and then they'd lose to say Balmain or Western Suburbs who are near the bottom, and you're expecting that win to get them up the ladder. It never happened.
Well, it's still happening today, mate. I mean, it's when a good side loses to a poor side, it's normally attitude. You're mentally not there, ready to go, and that's it's going to happen forever. That's just sport. Sometimes you underestimate your opponent, and they're up for it, and you're not quite up for it. You'll get beaten, and that's what happens. It's happening every day in probably every sport.
Mate, I can't tip an NRL game to save myself this year. It's an absolute joke. It's so hard to pick a game because everyone can beat everyone. So you just got to not turn up with the right attitude. 1% off and you'll get beat.
Yeah,
crazy.
That's exactly right, mate. I mean, particularly the NRL, it's a tough sport. It's a tough game. And the teams down the bottom, I think the Tigers are playing this week. They're playing someone this week. I'll give them a chance, even though they got beaten by 50 last week against the Sharks. I give them a chance against someone this week, but I can't remember who it is.
Oh, I can't either. Yeah. All right. Okay. So you also played alongside a very familiar name in Phil Gould. So a lot of younger people, know him from his coaching and being at the Bulldogs these days. But what are your memories of him as a player and a person and, the great Phil Gould?
He was a very good player. Very good player. He captained Penrith, I think, the year before I came down. I think he might have captained them in 1978 when he was only about 21 years of age. Phil was always smart, rugby league mind. He was a very handy ball playing forward as well. He's a bit similar. His style was a bit similar to me, ball playing style.
Okay.
And he, in a lot of ways, was similar to me. And we formed a pretty good relationship. I mean, in those days, we both liked to punt, like to bet on the horses and all that sort of stuff. And it's funny how that you're sort of attracted to those sort of people. You sort of bond with them a fair bit. And most of my mates were blokes who used to like a punt. There was where we trained at Penrith, right over the road, there's Penrith Trots. So we would actually train on a Thursday night quite regularly. And then after that, go over to the Trots, have a bet. I was with a bloke. There was a bloke on the wing called John Ryan, who's no longer with us. He passed away. He was quite a big gambler. And I mixed with him and a few others who liked the punt, and then and Gus was one of those. So I mixed with Gus quite well. Gus was a bit outspoken, even as a footballer. There were times when we were struggling in the footy, and he wasn't coached, but he'd have a say, like as in try and help the situation. He found himself in a bit of trouble from time to time within the club, so he'd get dropped to reserve grade, and obviously wasn't happy with that. But it's the way it was, it was. And mate, Gus has done over my career. He's done a lot of good things for me. I mean, there's, you hear the stories. I lived with him for 15 months after I separated from my wife in Brisbane and went back to Sydney, and I didn't pay board. He bought most of the food. I didn't have much. I was trying to pay maintenance and pay off a house at the same time. It wasn't easy, but he also put a good word in for me through the media, and I reckon I got a couple of starts from his representing me or just pushing me in a media perspective. I know he did on the Footy Show. He was on Channel 9 and he just said, you should get this bloke on the Footy Show. So I went on there once and another opportunity and just went from there,
Oh, well, we're talking about the Footy Show. I was going to ask you about that later, but while we're on it, so is that how you actually got on the Footy Show, and what are your memories? And like for me personally, my memories of you when I was probably my late teens and early 20s on the Footy Show, and you're doing the small talk with the kids, and oh mate, I love that. That was gold, absolute gold every week. I loved it. Like, how
it was funny. It was always funny, mate. I got on the Footy Show. I don't know. I was a mate of Johnny Gibbs, who was on the radio down here with us at 2UE at the time, and then Gibbsy was a great mate of Fatty's.
Okay.
And Gibbsy used to push me as well. Like, I was doing radio with Gibbsy on 2UE, I think it was. And Gibbsy would say to Fatty, so, man, you should get him on. And I played with Fatty. I played a State of Origin game with Fatty in 1983. So I knew Fatty. I didn't know him well, but I knew him. So it was just probably basically through Gibbsy giving me a bit of a leg up, and Gus, supporting me as well. And eventually I got a run with the Fat. And I used to do a segment called League of Their Own, where people would send in clips of, some remarkable try being scored or whatever. And I would do a bit of commentary on it, something like that. And then got into the small talk side of it, which was fantastic. I did have a say in the small talk. I pushed that myself, and the bloke who ran the show, Glenn Pallister, sort of saw a bit of, good in it, and it ended up being great. It was fun. It was
that's what sticks out for me almost the most. Just some of the stuff you asked, and some of the answers from the kids were gold.
Well, mate, they'd give me questions to ask, but half the time I wouldn't even look at them. I'd just, as soon as you mention girls, something like that, I mean, the whole tone of the show increased and was better. They all, some of them rapping themselves. One bloke saying he had a girlfriend for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, different girlfriends, all this stuff. It's just funny. And mate, they were racist, the kids. They said some stuff. A lot of it we had to cut out. A lot. And I said this the other day. The thing about it was we would do a segment, and sometimes you'd walk away from it thinking, that was okay. But when the people worked their magic at Channel 9 and cut bits out and whatever, it would always come up pretty good. Yeah. And then other times it'd be outstandingly good. You would never get a dud episode of it. It was always pretty good, and then sometimes it was just hilarious. So, mate, I was lucky to be part of it, and, I'd love to still be doing it, but, mate, those days are gone. I mean, we had Billy Slater on the radio the other day. He said, you know what, I don't look back, I look forward. Well, I wish I lived by that. I do look back a lot. I loved it. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, mate, I think all of us miss the Footy Show because there's nothing out there really like that anymore.
You get hammered by, social media and whatever. No matter what you do, mate. I mean, I'm not really. I am on social media, but I don't look at it very often, and I don't participate in it. I mean, it's just the reason for so many bad things happening in the world at the moment, and the quicker they try and monitor it or get rid of it somehow, the better, I think.
Yeah. And even doing these podcasts, it's always a bit of a, I wouldn't say it's a risk, but I keep a very positive Facebook group for the Point of Difference Rugby League group, and we don't tolerate any like bad
Well,
apples in the group. Let's put
I
it
see
that way. They get banned straight
I'm not on
away.
I'm not on Facebook, but I'm on X. But as soon as someone bags me on X, I just delete them or unfollow them. I
Yeah.
don't know what I do. I haven't done it for a while because I haven't looked for a while, you know. But I just the older I get, the less I enjoy doing it. I do find it a nice way of keeping up to date with what's happening in the world. Very immediate. You can, know
Yes.
what's going on straight away. But I don't. I wouldn't look at it. I probably look at my social media account 3 days a week, maybe 3 times in a week.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't take a great deal of
Yeah.
notice.
I'm not really a scroller because I work 12-hour shifts at work. I do this as a passion
What do
on the
you do?
side. And sorry, what do I do?
What work do you
Um,
do?
I work for Fonterra, which is New Zealand's dairy company, the massive dairy company. So I
Right.
drive forklifts and load trucks and load containers, and I'm just driving a forklift for 12 hours a day.
Where are
It's
you
full on.
based? Are you in New Zealand now, or are you in
I'm
Queensland?
in New Zealand. New
Are you?
Zealand. Yeah.
Yeah, decent. So we're going
Yeah,
across. Is that the Tasman? We go across there. I don't even know what the ocean is
yeah, I think
between.
so. We'll go with the Tasman Sea.
And if I go down, I'm not far from the beach here. I could go down and wave. You might be able to see me. Would that be possible?
Let's give it a crack.
Yeah, I won't be doing that.
No, I enjoy it, but no, I don't really scroll Instagram or Facebook or anything. I'm too busy, doing these podcasts and working 12-hour shifts, and then I'm a marathon runner as well, so I'm training, and just me and my wife are always out running. So that's us: run, then go eat and drink. Basically, it's a good
Good
life.
on you. Good on
Good
you.
stuff. Now, getting back to footy, do you remember playing the Anco Cup matches way back in the day? 'Cause I saw a match where you took on a brilliant Auckland side in 1979, so our Auckland rep team from New Zealand. We played the likes of Olsen Filipina, Dane O'Hara, Gary Prome, and Dennis Williams, just to name a few. Like, do you remember those days where you take on an Auckland invitation side in the Anco Cup?
I'm trying to remember, mate. I had great respect for the Kiwis. Also, Filipina. I mean, he played for Balmain as well. Yeah, mate, look,
Yeah.
the answer to your question is no. I don't remember playing that
Okay.
game. I was playing for Penrith, obviously. If I was in '79,
Yes.
did they
Yes.
beat us?
No, you got the win.
Okay, mate. I can't really recall it. See, I'm a without going. I'm a great friend of Gary Freeman's.
Yes.
He's one of the great Kiwi players. And I ended
Yes.
up working with Gary for about 10 years selling poker machines over here in Australia. So he's
Oh,
one of
nice.
the great mates. He lives near Cameron Smith now on the Gold Coast.
Yes,
So
I met him 2 days after I met you.
I did you? Yeah. Mate, he's a good
Yeah,
fella. He's a good man.
yeah,
So
yeah.
anyway, but that's neither here nor there, mate. The answer is no. I can't remember that. I remember my first Amco Cup game I played for Norths in Brisbane, and in those days we played against the Sydney sides, right? The
Okay,
Brisbane sides, not a combined Brisbane side. The Brisbane teams played the Sydney teams, and we played Wests this night.
okay.
And Wests had Tommy Radonicus, I think, playing for them. This
Oh,
would have
wow.
been 75 or something like that. I don't know. And we're actually leading the comp Norths, and we gave ourselves a chance of beating Wests.
Yeah.
Sydney. We got beat 60-0. And
Ouch. Oh my God.
I think that was a Wednesday night. I had the Thursday and Friday off work. I didn't go in. I was too embarrassed because I played terrible, and so did the rest of us. And that's years ago, but that just shows you that showed me that time the difference between the Sydney sides and the Brisbane sides.
Yeah. So that 60-point drubbing, that they were 3-point tries back then as well, eh?
Yeah, that's right. Well, we got hammered. They were running last in Sydney, and we were first in Brisbane. And I think that probably we all sort of sat back after that and thought, oh, there is a bit of difference, more difference between the best and the worst, in the Sydney and the Brisbane comp in those days. But yeah, that's life. We were awful. They were great, and they just
Yeah.
demolished us.
Oh, how good was Tommy O'Donicus? Like, just rough as guts, but everyone loved him, eh?
Mate, he was a good man. I mean, I went in one day. In the early days when I was at Penrith in '79, they asked me to go into Channel 7, I think it was, to do the Sunday show. But they
Okay.
had a Sunday, I don't know if it was a footy show, what it was called, I can't remember. I don't even know who was running it. But to get a bit of exposure, it was nice. It was my first year in Sydney. People didn't really know who I was. And
Right.
I got a chance to get on television, and do a panel or whatever it was, and the other person they got in was Tommy Raudonikis. So we were both. I went in the green room, which I didn't really know what I was doing. And next minute, Tommy comes in. They played the Saturday. I think I probably had two. I can't remember. And Tommy had been on the drink all night, like he was legless. And he came in and said, "Who are you?" And I said, "Oh, well, my name's Darryl Brohman. I played for Penrith." He said, "You're hopeless." I said, "Yeah, well, you know." So he just had this way about him that you just loved him, you know. And he said, I do remember playing you. You're all right, you know, that sort of stuff. And just to get acknowledgement from the great Tommy Raudonikis was nice, but he was like his trousers were dirty, shirt was crinkled, he stunk of beer, you know. He did the whole lot, and I just thought, I don't know about this, you know. This isn't like I'm going in there sober as a judge and a shave, everything. He was completely the opposite, you know. But that's just the way he was.
Oh, he's a legend. I love it. I love the stories. In 1982, you were made captain of the Panthers. So, did you enjoy the role being captain?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I saw it as a great honour. You know, I'd only been there for a few years, and I got made captain, and I tried to make it as best I could. Again, I copped a couple of injuries, and I probably lost the captaincy through that. And then Royce ended up taking over from me. Royce Simmons, you know, I love
legend.
Royce. He's a legend, great bloke. He's got Alzheimer's now, but you wouldn't know. Well, I only see him a few times a year, but you wouldn't know he's the same bloke. Exactly the same bloke. He's always been friendly. You know, he's got time for everybody. Just a salt of the earth bloke, Royce. I love Royce Simmons. I love playing with him. He was a hell of a player. Became the first Penrith player to play for Australia. I wished it was me. I wished
it was meant to be you, wasn't it?
Could have been me, but it wasn't to be. But he became that in 84 or 5, I suppose. But he thoroughly deserves it, because there's been no better player put on a Penrith jersey than him. Certainly no bloke.
You know, when I was young, I used to collect all the Winfield Cup videos, VHS videos, because that's how I learned about rugby league as a young fella, because we didn't get a lot of it over here. And one of my greatest memories that hit me straight away when you said Royce Simmons was, you know, my first memory of him was when he scored 2 tries in their 91 grand final. And just like, I love the fairy tales and the drama of those great grand finals. And when you see a champion bloke score 2 in their first ever grand final win as captain and all of that, it's just, how amazing is that?
Well, it was a shame he wasn't captain, because he deserved to be. He actually got dropped that year. I think Gus was the coach, and at some stage he got dropped to reserve grade, and he had to fight his way back into the side. He was captain of Penrith, had been for years. And then, you know, him and Gus probably had a bit of a falling out, I think. And Royce got dropped, but he got back into the side, and they won that comp. I mean, it was phenomenal, you know, because I played with nearly all those guys who played in that 91 grand final. You know, I retired in 87, so I'd had fair association with most of them, and I was just so happy for them. You know, they deserved it. They were a great side. You know, the emergence of Brad Fittler, Brad Izzard was there, Royce. You know, there was a lot of blokes I'd played a fair bit of football with.
Yeah, amazing side. Great grand final, that one. So moving on to 1983, you mentioned you made your debut for Queensland in the opening match of the series. So how special is it for you as a Queenslander to be named for your mighty Maroons back in the day? You know, was it something you really strived for and wanted to be a part of?
Oh, absolutely. I was 27. I thought my time had come. I didn't think I had a chance of getting there, but Arthur Beetson was the coach, and I knew I didn't know that, but I found out that Arthur always liked the way I played. I played against Arthur in Sydney. Like, he played for Parramatta down here, and he was my idol. He was always my idol. And he was coach of Queensland in '83, and you know, he rang me up. He said, "Look, I think I'm going to pick you in the first State of Origin game," and I was a bit gobsmacked, to be honest with you. I'd been playing okay, but I thought I could play better. Anyway, he picked me, and you know, unfortunately, there's the broken jaw. There's another injury. We got a broken jaw in that game, but I was so pleased to play, because I knew it was a great opportunity for me to play for Australia. They picked an Australian side later that night, and the bloke who replaced me, Dave Brown, when I got injured, he ended up making the Australian side. So I was a bit pissed off by that. You know, the broken jaw was hurt bad enough without an opportunity for me. And I believed I was playing pretty well when I was on the field, and Queensland won that game. So, it was just, mate, again, just a major disappointment for me. But it was one of the highlights of my life. Playing for Queensland. As I said, I played in 78, I think, for Queensland, but not state footy. And that was only the 6th ever State of Origin game in 83 that I was selected. And, we have Wally Lewis, Mel was in the side, Gene Miles. Mark Murray, Colin Scott. We had a pretty good side.
Very good side.
They beat New South Wales. They had a gun side, but it was around the time when Queensland was sort of just putting their mark on State of Origin with blokes who in New South Wales, they didn't know who they were, but they quickly found out who they were. Wally and Gino and Mel and those.
They would have had pretty much the whole Parramatta backline, pretty much.
I'm trying to think. Sterling,
Steve Ella
would have been there. They probably were. Steve Ella would have played. Eric Gross was on the wing. I think Gary Jack Gary Jack wasn't fullback. I think it might have been the bloke from Canterbury. Anyway, but they would have had a lot of the Parramatta boys playing then in '83. Because they'd won 2 comps in a row, and we're going to win the 3rd that year. So
that's right.
It would have been there. Maybe Hunty was there. Neil Hunt might have been on the wing. I'm not sure.
Okay. So what were some of the challenges? Obviously, you missed a stack of game time from the broken jaw. That was the Les Boyd incident, right? And so that must have taken its toll on you, like for the rest of the season.
I missed. Well, that took a toll on me. I didn't play for the rest of the year. Broken jaw. I was 6 weeks wired up.
Oh my God.
But I lost a bit of weight. I was actually looking pretty good. Because in those, I don't know what they do these days, but in those days they wired your teeth together like that, and you had a pair of clippers. Had to have them hanging around your neck, because if you started being sick, spewing, well, you had to unclip them so you could get rid of it. Otherwise, you'd choke to death. I don't know what they do these days when you have a broken jaw, but that's 83. So that's a long time ago. But I used to, mate. I used to have like soups, KFC gravy. I used to love that. That was a bonus for me. Suck that through my teeth, try and have that. That was my specialty every second day. I'd have because you could buy a little cup of gravy those days. I don't know if you can these days.
Oh, let's go.
KFC gravy and suck that through. I'd get chocolate. I'd grate it up and try and suck it through my teeth, because I love chocolate. Potato chips. I got a rolling pin and tried to roll them flat and tried to suck them through my teeth when I was horrendous. I was starving, and I was down to about 90 kilos, which is pretty well as light as I'd ever been probably. But I just through lack of eating, I was drinking, Diet Coke and all that sort of stuff. You just try and get in whatever you can.
Yeah.
Through the cracks.
Right, that's a tough situation.
But ask anyone who's had a broken jaw, it's not much fun.
No. Oh, mate. I definitely wouldn't want to be down doing that with myself. So what was the atmosphere, though, getting back to the Origin match itself? What's it like pulling on that jersey and running out with that crowd? Like, how massive is that?
Mate, in those days, we used to drive the bus down Caxton Street, Queenslanders, and like it's something I'd never experienced before. Even though I was 27, I'd never experienced anything like it. Like, the fans were just going apeshit, they were just going off. And I remember, and I don't know how this worked, but I remember when we pulled up at Lang Park, to get to the dressing shed, we had to walk through the members bar. And that was an experience in itself, like you walking through carrying your bag, and blokes are pissed, slapping you on the back or bagging you or whatever, whichever way it was. Yeah. And then I remember like getting changed and then running out, and then running out was just, they had let these fireworks off that I wasn't expecting, and it was just these big boom, really loud, right, like just about right next to me as I was running out. And I thought, oh shit, like I was shitting myself as it was, playing in this stage. And, it was just an incredible just an incredible feeling. It's something I always wanted to do was, play for
Yeah.
my state. And I had done it before, but not in State of Origin. As I said, I thought my time had come. I was 27. I thought it may have passed me by, but I got the opportunity, and I would
Yeah.
have loved to have finished the game off. And Wally was dominant in that game. He's just the best player ever, Wally Lewis. So,
Oh, champion.
well,
Yeah.
I still get on pretty good with him as he's got a bit older and he's matured big time.
Nice, nice. So you got to the end of 1983 and you decided to sign with the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs. So was that a big decision to leave the
Oh yeah,
Panthers and sign with the Doggies? And how did that come about?
I didn't want to leave Penrith. I wanted to stay there, but Penrith came up with a new strategy with regards paying for players, where they weren't doing any more signing on fees. They were
Okay,
going to give them massive match payments, as
okay,
when I say massive, $1,000 a game, I think it was.
right,
And that was it. So if you played 25 games for the year, you get 25,000. If you played every one of them.
okay,
But that didn't suit me because on the back of what I said before, all the injuries I'd had, I didn't want to go out there, get injured, and not play and get no money. So
right.
I said, "Oh well, that doesn't suit me." And they said, "Well, you have to go. Up to you." I said, "Well, I'm
Far
going."
out.
And actually, Roy Simmons come round. He told me to go. He said, "Mate, I'd
Okay,
go." So
yep,
I had an offer to go to Canterbury and also Parramatta. Now,
really?
Parramatta won the three previous comps,
Yes,
81, 2 and 3, and I wanted to play for Parramatta. Like they had
absolutely.
Sterling, Kenny, Growth, Ella, Cronin, and that had
Price,
a pretty good forward pack.
everyone.
But I
Yeah,
thought I could add to their forward pack. I thought I could anyway. And that's where I wanted to go. But they offered me, I think, from memory, 17,500.
okay,
And I was going to go, and then out of the blue, I got a note from Bullfrog Moore that they wanted to speak to me as well, Canterbury.
right.
To be honest with you, I wasn't overly keen on going to Canterbury, only because Parramatta was closer to where I
Yep,
lived, still living
of
at
course.
Penrith, and they'd won three comps in a row.
Yeah,
But
that doesn't hurt. Yeah,
yeah, at the end of the day, Canterbury offered me, I think, 25,000, which is
right.
a significant number. And I thought about it, and I thought, you know what, that because Canterbury in those 3 years where Parramatta had won the three comps, they'd probably run third because the two top sides were Parramatta and Manly
Yes,
in the early 80s,
they
right?
played in the 82 and 83 deciders.
I don't know what it was, but Canterbury were finishing third, right? They kept
Yep,
finishing third or fourth in the comp behind those two sides. Well, they went out and they bought some players. At the end of 83, they bought Terry Lamb,
yeah,
obviously the great players. Peter Kelly, Peter Tunks, Brian Batiste, probably a few others that I'm embarrassed that I can't remember who. And I knew
yeah,
they had a good side. They had the Mortimer brothers, Andrew
yeah.
Farrar, Billy Johnston was there. Mark Bugden, they bought that year. Steve Folkes was there. They had Langmack and Gillespie coming through. They had a good
Far
side.
out.
They had a good squad.
Great side.
They bought Warren Ryan to coach, and Warren had a
Yes,
great reputation. So at the end of the day, I went there purely and simply because of the money. It wasn't really
okay,
anything to do with. I knew they'd improved, and they would improve. But I went there because I was getting an extra 7,500 than what I was going to get at Parramatta, and I knew they'd be a good side. So
yeah.
I went there. You wouldn't believe it. First trial match we play in St George, I dislocated my shoulder again.
Oh, unbelievable.
I had to have an operation, and they were very good to me. They paid me some money out of my contract while I was recuperating, and I sort of didn't get back into the game until about midway through the season. And
Okay,
by that stage, Canterbury were leading the comp. They'd won most of their games. They're playing extremely well.
right.
So it was always going to be difficult for me to get back into the first grade side. So I ended up coming back through seconds. My
Okay,
shoulder wasn't completely right. I knew it wasn't right, but I was sort of bluffing my way through it with it, and
yeah,
and doing what you have to do to try and get it better bit by bit. And there was this game they played one day when they were leading the comp about midway through the year against Cronulla at Belmore Oval,
right.
and the coaches were Warren Ryan and Jack Gibson. Jack Gibson was coaching Cronulla. This is 84.
Okay,
And at half time, Cronulla were leading Canterbury 20-0. Canterbury leading the comp, and Cronulla were probably fringe 8.
Okay.
So I was a bit upset. But the main thing was Warren Ryan hated the fact that Jack Gibson was the super coach or classified as the super coach because Warren thought he was, and Warren was a great coach.
Was a good coach.
He was a very good coach, mate. I don't know. I never played under Jack Gibson. I don't know whether he was as good as Jack Gibson, but I learnt more off Warren than I did off most other coaches I was ever involved in.
Right.
Anyway, at half time, Warren's got the shits. So he's walked into the sheds. In those days, you'd play reserve grade, then half a dozen of you would sit on the bench for first grade. So, half a dozen of us are sitting there, and first grade side comes in, Warren comes in. He just said, look, you blokes just disappointing, really disappointing. And he just plucked 4 blokes from the bench from our 6, and I was one of them.
Right.
To replace 4 of the other boys. So we went out and played the second half of the game against Cronulla. We still lost, but we didn't lose by 20. We might have lost by 10. I can't remember what it was.
Okay.
We played okay. I mean, I didn't think I played great, but I played okay. Comes a Tuesday night, he's kept us in the team. The 4 boys he's thrown out there, he kept in the team. I think there was me, Steve O'Brien, I think, the winger. Might have been Mark Bugden, the hooker. He came on with Billy Johnston. And there would have been someone else. I can't remember who it was. Anyway, mate, as luck would have it, I think we won the next week. I don't think we lost a game from then on. Won the grand final, best moment of my life, 84 grand final. Even though I wasn't completely happy because I'd started all the games leading up to the semis, and then Warren came up with this genius idea. He thought he'd leave me on the bench and start with Brian Batiste.
Right.
And I wasn't happy with it, but his theory was, well, because I'd done a bit of ball playing and I was going good ball playing wise and all that sort of stuff. He said, I'll put Brian Batiste on to take all the hits early, do the real hard stuff early, and then put you on when they get a bit tired and, he might be able to do whatever. Anyway, but I wasn't happy with it because I basically was saying he didn't think I was tough enough, to do the whole 80 minutes. But what can you do? You just accept it and do your best. And that's what happened in the semi-finals. We won the first semi. I think we had a week off, trained our asses off, and then won the grand final. We only won 6-4. But I came on just before half time, was 0-0.
Okay.
They scored just before half time. I might have been involved in a bad bit of defence then too. But they scored. And then at half time, I remember going into the sheds and I'm thinking, this is it. This is a make or break for me. This is my chance to win a comp. I've been down there for a long time. Anyway, cut a long story short, I feel as though I had a really good impact on the team in the second half. We only won 6-4, but I believe I was, when you play well.
Of course you do.
I knew I played well. I did. And best moment of my footy career, I reckon, winning the grand final.
Mate, that's amazing. I mean, not only did you win the grand final and you've got that moment of ecstasy, but you killed off the Parramatta dynasty of 3 grand finals.
Particularly seeing I could have been playing for them. As I said, I actually did want to go to them, but I had a choice between the 2 sides, and in the end, I probably made the right choice. In saying that, who knows what would have happened had I been playing for Parramatta? Maybe Parramatta might have won. Who knows? But I made the right choice. But I got to play with the Mortimer brothers, Terry Lamb, Peter Kelly, Tunks, Langmack, all those blokes. I had 2 years of the Bulldogs, probably the 2 best years of my life, football was.
So how did you feel when that siren went off? Was it just pure joy, ecstasy, all of that?
A lot, mate. I think finally done it. Finally won a comp with your mates. It was, we were exhausted. Mick Cronin had a kick to level the game with about 3 or 4 minutes to go, and he missed it. It was a pretty easy position. I remember standing in front of him 10 metres back, and I was sledging him, which wasn't my go. But mate, desperate times calls for desperate measures, and I love Mick, but it's all fair in love and war. But I was sledging, whether it got in his head or not, I don't know. But he missed it. And mate, I firmly believe had he kicked that goal, I don't think we would have held on in the extra time. I think they would.
Okay. Oh mate, it's in the history books.
I think what happened was the first week we had a bye, semi-final weekend. Then we played, won. another week off, and then played in the
Okay.
grand final. So we'd only played 2 games in a month. So we were a bit,
Right.
I think we were
Bit
vulnerable.
underdone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, we trained pretty hard. We probably weren't, but we were probably vulnerable if it went a bit longer.
Okay. Interesting. Interesting. So 1985 was another year for the Doggies. You went all the way to the grand final, but you played in the prelim final against the Eels and you smashed them 26-0. But then you didn't play in the grand final against the Dragons. So what happened there?
Hey, mate, I was in and out of first grade the whole year that year. Played a lot of
Okay.
reserve grade. I was, mate, I was disappointed not to be in the side, but I sat on the bench, didn't get on.
Okay.
And they won, I think, 7-6 against
Correct.
St George.
Yep.
Uh, you know, but as I said, we had a lot of good players, so someone had
Yeah.
to miss out. And there was
Okay.
that year, David Gillespie, I think, emerged as a force.
Yes.
Had basically the same squad that had some other players as well. So, mate, I don't blame anyone by myself. Again, I was sort of, I think, probably a bit lazy on the back of a big 84 win. I probably
Okay.
went a bit overboard in the off season, drinking and eating and stuff, and struggled to find fitness in 85 and
Okay.
struggled to find a spot in the side. So I paid the penalty for that.
Okay. Was it a bit of a sore point for you? Like, did you feel hurt missing out on the side or a bit aggrieved at all?
Um, not really. I
Okay.
was disappointed. I didn't
Yep.
feel aggrieved. I think I had a bit to offer them. Had I been in the side, but obviously the coach didn't see it that way. I mean, we had, I can't remember what side took on the ground on the field, but it would have been Langmack, Folkes, probably Gillespie. I'm not sure. Tunks, Kelly, Billy Johnston might have played hooker then. I'm not sure, but because there's a few of us who would have missed out on the side from the previous year. I don't think Buggo was there,
Okay.
and I wasn't. There was probably a couple of others, but I mean, I didn't feel aggrieved. I mean, it was pretty competitive there. We had a lot of good
Yeah.
players. And if
Yeah.
you're just a tad off your game and whatever, you paid the penalty, and that's probably what happened to me.
Yeah. The reason I asked was I thought because you guys gave the Eels such a hiding the week before, so usually a coach might just stick with the same side that does the damage.
I don't know if I
Yeah.
ran on that day. I might have come off the bench and played. I'm not
Okay.
sure because
I think you're on the bench.
I played a fair bit of reserve grade that year, and I struggled to get into first grade. So, I don't think I was in the run-on side. I don't think I was dropped as such from the
Okay.
semi-final to the grand final. But we battled. They battled to beat the Dragons. I think it was 7-6, and I think an Andrew Farrer field goal was the difference between the two sides.
Crazy the low scores in some of those finals back then.
I know in those days, the next year Parramatta beat Canterbury. I'd left. I'd gone to Penrith. In
Yes.
the grand final, Parramatta beat them 4-2. So in the
Yeah.
space of 3 years, Canterbury won 2 competitions and scored 15 points in total.
That's
You know,
crazy.
it's amazing.
Yeah.
They won 6-4, 7-6, and lost 4-2. So
Was that a tryless grand final?
I think Parra
I think
might
it
have
was.
scored a try. I'm not sure.
Maybe.
I'm not sure whether they kicked 3 goals all up or not. I don't know. I can't
Oh,
remember.
far
But
out.
I think
Crazy
Parramatta
stuff.
may have scored a try.
Right. Okay. So as you said, 85 season, the end of the 85, you left the Bulldogs back home to Penrith for 2 more seasons. So was it just time to leave the Bulldogs and go back home? What was the thought process behind
Mate,
that move?
I think they thought I'd had enough. The Bulldogs.
Okay.
I don't know. I can't remember if they offered me a contract or not. I don't think they did. So I was actually going to go back to Brisbane and play in the club football in Brisbane.
Hmm.
But the last minute I got a call. I'm not sure who from. Might have been Tim Sheens or Royce or somebody. So why don't you come back to Penrith? I was living at Penrith still. I always
That makes
lived there.
sense.
So I decided to go back. I mean, Tim Sheens was the coach. He told me right at the start, if you don't get to 95 kilos, you won't play first grade. So 95 for me, I'm 150 now. I mean, that's a lot.
Okay.
So I accepted that, and it took me about 6-7 weeks to get to that situation, that weight, and then
Yeah.
he picked me. Once I got to the weight, I got picked in first grade and had a pretty good
Okay.
year in '86. I played State of Origin again in '86.
You did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So '86 was a pretty good year for me. We went okay. I think Penrith. I can't remember where we ended up finishing, and I can't remember what happened to me. But '86, I as I said, I got my way back in the State of Origin, and under Wayne Bennett, he coached Queensland in '86. We unfortunately lost. We lost 3-0, but they're all pretty close games. I only played one game. I did my back. That's another. I did hurt my back. State of Origin 2 and missed most of the season. So.
But how good is it though? Like when you think, like, the Bulldogs think you're kind of done there, and you go back home, you have the challenge of getting down to 95 kilos, then you play your way back into Queensland. Like, you must have been pretty chuffed with yourself, like to go. Yeah, I've got
I was proud of myself. Yeah, I was, mate. I could have thought at the end of '85 maybe my career's over, and I was going to go back to Brisbane to play in local club football up there. But as I said, Penrith, saw a bit in me, and I went back. I still had mates there who I'd played with previously, and there was the emergence of Cartwright, Geyer, Alexander, good players. I knew they were a good side. I knew they had some good players there, so I thought I'll go back and try it out. And I'm still mates with the three of those boys. I'm mates with all of them, mate. But those three boys were exceptional players, and
absolutely,
it was nice to be part of a team that they were in.
Absolutely. Oh, Greg Alexander, I mean, us Warriors fans just loved him when he started off the Warriors inaugural season. I know he came over, after such a tragic passing of his brother and everything. But we hold him in very high regard. He
was a wonderful footballer, and he's very good on television, mate. He's a very good commentator. I love listening to him.
Football brain, eh?
Talking about it's smart.
Yeah.
He's a hell of a footballer, and he's a good bloke. I get on. I don't see a lot of him, but when I do see him, we have a little cuddle and stuff. I enjoy his company. Enjoy his company big time.
Oh, that's fantastic, man. Oh, he's a great man. Did you really enjoy that second Origin? Did you actually pinch yourself when you ran out for that second Origin match?
I was at the SCG.
It's such a journey to get back there.
Yeah, it was. It was a journey to get there. You're right. It was bloody. I had a lot going on, and somehow I got back into the Origin setup, and we played at the SCG. I must admit, I was exhausted. I was tired. Tackling wasn't really my forte, but I did. I think from memory, I did 40-odd tackles in that game.
Holy jeez!
For me, that was a lot. I was going to play. I got picked for Origin 3 to play in Brisbane, but in those days, because it was a dead rubber, you could play for your club on the weekend before.
Okay.
So I wanted to do the right thing by Penrith, so I played on the weekend, hurt my back, so I missed out on the game 3. So I should have played a lot more State of Origin. When I say a lot more, I should have played a few more games, but through injuries, etc., they just stopped that happening. So
such a shame. Such a shame.
I was going to say I missed nearly all the season, the whole season after that back injury, and then I came back and played the last game of the year for Penrith against Cronulla, and I've got to say I did have a good game. We smashed Cronulla at Penrith.
Brilliant.
And Brad Izzard was brilliant, but I chipped over the top and all that sort of stuff. I was doing a lot of great stuff.
Oh, twinkle toes, chip over the top. That's the one.
Well, I wasn't chasing. I'd tipped for someone else to chase. But anyway, we had a big win, but I'd missed out on opportunities because of the injuries.
Oh, mate, that's crazy. So to finish off your time at Penrith, you actually won a grand final reserve grade with a win over the Manly Sea Eagles. Is that a nice way to sign off on the career?
Yeah, it was. It was. But it was a tough time because I played a bit of reserve grade. Graham Murray was our coach, great Graham Murray. Really? And I played a bit of reserve grade that year. We had a time trial situation at Penrith where Tim Sheen started this. You had to be able to run 2.5 Ks in under 10 minutes. Cut a long story short, I couldn't do it, and I got dropped to reserve grade. So I ended up playing a lot of the season in reserve grade. Mate, it was a tough time for me because I'd lost a son just before the semi-final started. He had epilepsy, and he, because of that, passed away. So it was a really tough time for me and my wife and my daughters. But I thought it's going to be my last year. I'll finish it off. So we ended up playing the semis. I wasn't in great form. I wasn't in a great state of mind either. It was hard.
I can only
But
imagine.
I thought I'd
Far
stay.
out.
There was a great friend of Graham Murray's, and we had a pretty good side in reserve grade, so we ended up winning the comp. So it was nice. It was a nice way to finish footy, but it was a tough couple of months for us.
Absolutely. So, what did you go through once you decided to hang up the boots? Is that quite a hard thing to do for that time
No,
period afterwards?
not for me. Not for me. It
Okay.
wasn't. I knew I'd had enough. I
Right.
just through the personal tragedy and stuff, and my mind wasn't anywhere near wanting to play football and stuff. So that was an easy decision. I knew I wasn't playing great, so it's time to give it away. I was 31, I think.
Okay.
About the age you retired in those days. So,
Yeah. Back in those days, you've done quite well. I think it's really well. Yeah.
yeah.
So you moved on to coaching. You landed at the Brisbane Broncos reserve grade side. So how the hell did that come about? Because Wayne Bennett would have been there.
He was. Wade Bennett. Well, that was the first year they were in the comp. Out of the blue,
Yes.
he rang me one day. He said, "What are you doing next year?" I said, I'm going to retire, mate. So I'm not going to play. I thought he was ringing me to ask me if I wanted to play for the Broncos. He said, "No, I don't want you to play." He said, "I want you to coach. Can you coach the reserve grade?" And I thought about it. I thought, shit, that's a nice compliment that he'd asked me to do it, because I must have made an impact on him in that game I played for Queensland in '86.
Okay.
And I said, "Oh, yeah, I'm going to retire." I thought, "Oh, well, going back to Brisbane, they can help pay the removalist costs. Financially, it's a good thing."
Yep.
Mate, I never adapted to it. I got up there. We had a pretty good side, but I just, end of the day, I couldn't coach. I
Okay.
didn't have I didn't apply myself. Again, as I said, it was just after we'd lost to the Sun too. It
Right.
was a difficult time in my life. I ended up that year splitting up from my wife. So
Okay.
it was a really difficult time in my life, and I probably didn't focus enough on the coaching, as what was required. So
Fair
it was
enough, man.
a failure. I ended up not staying with them, or they sacked me basically at the end of the year, and ended up going
Okay.
to Sydney and coached at Canterbury under Gus.
Okay. So did Gus give you the phone call? Come over to the Bulldogs and
Yeah, he
give it a
did.
crack.
He knew I'd got sacked, and he rang me and said, "Do you want to come to the Bulldogs?" I think he knew that my marriage had split up as well, so I was in a bit of turmoil personally in my life, and I didn't know if I wanted to leave Brisbane or not, because I had a couple of daughters with my wife, and I didn't want to. We'd been through a tough 18 months, having
Yeah.
lost a son, and I'd finished my football, then I got sacked at the Broncos, and then
Oh,
that
mate.
stuff. We'd split up, so
It's a lot, man.
well, there's a lot to, just go through, and I ended up thinking, oh yeah, okay, I'll go. So I went and
Okay.
signed with, the Bulldogs, who'd won the Premiership in '88
They
as
did.
reserve grade coach, and I was just as bad coaching the reserve grade Broncos as I at Bulldogs as I was at the Broncos. So, but we had a good
Oh,
time,
dear.
good blokes, and I lived with Gus for 12 months.
Yep. Okay. So that was the sign off on the rugby league career at that point. Was there anything else that came after that?
No, not really. Well, the media came along.
Okay.
I finished coaching in 89, and then out of the blue, I think a bloke by the name of Brian Sanders rang me and said, "Do you want to be the commentator?" They used to call all the Penrith games. 2KA was
Okay.
the station in Penrith. Said, "Well, you come with me." He called the game, and I'd do the comments. Get $50 a game or something. And I thought, oh well, stay around, and I'll get to go to the footy and do all that stuff. So I said, yeah. So I started doing that, and then
And
I've just
then
had a job every year since.
that's amazing.
Radio. Mate, I've been on radio every year since, what's that, 89, I think 1990. I've had a job. It's continued to be better and better. Certainly financially, it's got a bit better. I don't get more than $50 a game now, so it's bloody good.
Mate, fantastic. And we've absolutely loved seeing you and listening to you over the years. We all love you here, mate. And I just want to finish up with a few fun questions I ask everybody.
Yep.
So first one is, who do you support in the NRL and who will win the competition in
Yeah.
2024?
Mate, Shane Flanagan's a mate of mine, so I've
Yeah.
actually supported, and I live in Cronulla, but I've always had a soft spot, obviously, for the Dogs and Penrith, who I played for.
Yeah.
Broncos. I've got a bit of a soft spot for them. And Cronulla. Mate, I'll be honest with you, I don't really support anyone. But I'm interested to see how those four sides go, and I'm happy for them to be successful. But I'm not a mad supporter of any of them. You know, if you ask me Queensland, I'm certainly a Queensland supporter, but I'm not a mad. You know, I like Cronulla, I like Penrith, I like a lot of sides, but the ones I've been associated with over the years, they've probably got a stronger supporter base from me than any of the others.
Fair enough. So who's going to win the comp this year?
I think Penrith will win again. I thought Brisbane would win, but I don't think Brisbane will make it.
I don't think they'll make it now. I think it's too far.
I don't think they'll make it. I think Penrith are too strong.
Yeah.
Look, the Roosters, I think, on paper have got the best side, but they have had for the last 10 years and haven't won it very often. But they are starting to play some good football. Their halfback's a good player, Sam Walker, and he's getting better and better. So I think they're the danger to them. But I think Penrith, you want me to have a bet now, I'd say Penrith.
Okay. I think also the Roosters don't have to make this big late run like last year to make the top 8, because they ran out of gas by the time they got to the semis. Whereas this year they're sitting like second or third, and they're looking pretty comfortable to challenge.
They're playing good footy, but they should be playing good footy because they got a hell of a side. They got a bloody best side in the comp, and they should be winning games, and they are now. So we'll see. But I think Penrith might have their measure in the big games.
Yeah, they've still got Cleary to come back. It's kind of not fair on everyone else. They've got that good a side. They're just so good.
He's a handy player, isn't he? He's a good
Unbelievable. Player. Okay, 2 more questions. What is your favourite TV show or series of all time?
Oh, geez, that's a tough question. I used to like some of the old TV shows. I used to like the Munsters.
Oh, I've never had that answer.
Never heard the Munsters? You heard of the Munsters?
Yep.
I used to watch them. Mate, I used to like watching the Monkeys. This is when I was a kid.
Oh, wow.
Monkeys were a band who had a TV show. They'd be on about 5 o'clock every afternoon, like both the Munsters and the Monkeys. I enjoyed those when I was a kid. Mate, I don't watch a lot of, I do watch a lot of TV now, but it's mainly racehorses running around the screen. But I don't watch a lot of the TV. To be honest.
Were you ever partial to like Hogan's Heroes or MASH back in the day?
Oh yeah, loved them all. Loved all the older stuff. I mean, of the newer stuff, I don't have anything. I like Tipping Point. I don't know. You got that over there? Got a New Zealand version of Tipping Point, or is it?
We don't have New Zealand one, but we watch the British one over here.
Yeah, well, there's a British one. Todd Woodbridge runs the Australian version of it here as well. He does a great job. It's very good on it. So I do like Tipping Point, but mate, if you said my favourite of all time, probably the Munsters.
Nice. What about the Chase? Do you like doing a bit of the Chase?
No, not really. I don't watch it. No, I'm not big on it. Don't like it.
People love it. I go mad for it. Anyway, moving on. Okay, last question. Now, this was very appropriate for you, actually. I asked this to everyone. If you could only eat one meal for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Pie, peas, chips, and gravy.
I
do love it. Mate, I don't have it very often. In fact, I never have it. But when I was a kid, I remember I used to go to Coles or something. They'd have the supermarket there, and they'd have a little place where you'd go and sit down, and my mum would buy it for me. Pie, peas, chips, and gravy. I love it. That'd be it, mate. I could eat that every meal, every day. No problem.
Mate, I love it. That's so good. Great answer. Fantastic, man. Well, thank you so much for giving me your time, going through the old career, going on back in the day with me. It's been an absolute treat to have you on the show, man.
Mate, it's a good timing because I'm about to go and have a shower and get ready to go out. I'm going out for dinner tonight. It's my son-in-law's birthday, so I'm going over to his place. So I need to get ready and get going. Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me on, and hope you have great success with this podcast.
Thanks very much, man. Take care, and we'll see you all next time for Kick Off.
See you, mate.
Full time.